Do you like the Dreamcast? I love the Dreamcast. That's why I'm on a mission to complete every game on the system. There are almost 300 English language releases and I want you to join me in my adventure to completing them all. The games are chosen at random. Last week we rallied through V-Rally 2 Test Drive, whatever it wants to be called these days. Names all over the place. This week the random number generator has chosen Elemental Gimmick Gear. Man, I was so excited about this because it was the Dreamcast's first RPG. Oh, super excited. Unfortunately, whoever called this an RPG was an idiot. It's not an RPG, it's an action-adventure game like Zelda, which is great, it's just not what I was expecting. Every console needs to have their attempt at a Zelda killer. You know, the PS1 had Alundra, the Mega Drive had that Oasis game, and the Dreamcast has E.G.G. This was developed by Birthday, who didn't make much of a note aside from this game, and it was published by Hudson Soft in Japan and Vatico in North America. This never released in Europe because look at that god-awful box art. That's some early Mega Man vibes going on, like a cheap B-movie from the 50s. It's almost good because of it, but nah, you wouldn't buy that. Just for the record, I'm going to try my utmost to not do any egg puns because I am better than that. How are we going to complete this game? Well, there is only a story mode, so that's what we're going to do. Before we do though, I have to thank my Patreon supporters for believing in me. I greatly appreciate their support. They get lots of great perks for supporting me, but if you like this Dreamcast series, then the best perk is that you get to watch these videos a week earlier than everyone else, and of course ad-free. Check it out with the links below. The game starts with quite an extensive cutscene, and it's fully animated. That's not something I'd have expected on an early Dreamcast game. In the remnants of a post-apocalyptic world where nature has started to take over again, excavators enter a ruin to find there is a robot inside. And inside that robot is a man who seems to be in an eternal sleep. After doing some scientific tests by poking him, hitting some symbols next to his ear, and letting him smell a questionable finger, he ain't waking up. But they did find out that the robot is over 5,000 years old. Years pass by, 100 in fact, and yet there's no sign of him waking up. Rather than tossing him in the trash like I would have done, they analysed him and his robot, and over the course of those 100 years, they backwards engineered the robot and did what all governments would do and use it for war. But nowadays they become commonplace. They're like the cars of this world almost. Except they can punch. Why can't my car punch? Our little blue-haired man isn't sleeping forever though, since some unknown infiltrators enter the ruin and trip a switch that makes things go into re-apocalypse mode. It gets all Japanese and tentacly as an event known as the breeding occurs, spreading and destroying the land. Something like that would wake a fella up. And the scientist who's there to look after you names you Leon, although you can change that if you want to. My daughter begged me to change his name to Cat Dog, but unfortunately I have some, integrity. You are awake, but you have no memory, and suspiciously quickly, the scientist lady says, pop your clothes on and get in your machine. That will help figure out who you are. And that's it. That's what you're given. You are tasked with finding your memory. You are advised to check out Fogna, which is the name of the ruins that you were found in. And for 99% of this game, you're going to be walking around in this mechanical suppository, slippery controls and all. I have to say the story is pretty interesting, but the translation, or at least the thought put into the translation, wasn't exactly great. Like, it's a bit weirdly worded or phrased at times, but the funniest mistake is right at the beginning when this scientist dude says, "He is 2 years old. Good for you, little buddy." If you check the computer, you can get some nice little history about the development of E.G.G, the Elemental Gimmick Gear. Like, why didn't they use this for the cover art? That's badass. The first thing you'll notice as you enter the main town of the game is just how gorgeous this game is. It's one of the most unique looking games on the Dreamcast, in fact ever. Like, hand-drawn art, it's been done before and after, but not really on the Dreamcast, and I don't think I've seen anywhere else like this amount of color or this type of coloring, you know what I mean? It's super bold, and it's one of the main appeals of the game. Suddenly, out of nowhere, I get ambushed by another mech who's accusing me of being a pirate. Do I look like I've got scurvy? And we are whisked into a battle with the visuals changing to 3D. It's like a facelift gone wrong. We have a bit of a push fight. Admittedly, I was taken by surprise and I wasn't really ready and I was lost and I could barely even see where I was. But it's fine, you don't need to win this. It's supposed to be a tutorial that doesn't really teach you anything. Turns out this is just an overzealous kid wanting to protect the town. He says sorry by giving you an attack capsule, which if you pick 3 of these up, you get a boost to your attack. There's There's also these for defense and mind, which deals with magic stuff, and they are super important for getting far in this game. Most of them are optional, so you need to be keeping your eyes out. So I wander into the wilderness and I get killed by a fly. In my defense, 3 things. Number 1, the hit detection in this game is god-awful. Number 2, you have the reach of a sausage jouster. And number 3, regenerating health is a massive pain in the arse. You can get health pickups when you defeat enemies, but they mostly just drop coins, and even later, magic regeneration is added into the mix to make health a 1 in 6 chance of popping up. And because of the dodgy hit detection and rubbish reach, while you're trying to grind health, you'll probably just end up losing more in the process. But perhaps I'm getting ahead of myself, because despite these limitations, Elemental Gimmick Gear is quite generous in terms of you failing. You'll always start at the entrance of the screen you just came from, with about 30% health, whatever. So it's even better than Zelda in that regard. There you start from the beginning of the dungeon. Here, just the room you just entered into, which makes it far more palatable and makes you willing to overcome its major issues. Who needs to balance difficulty when you can just respawn at exactly the same place? So I stumbled into Fogna, which is where I was told I should go, and I'm instantly ambushed by robots. And there's like 4 exits, all of which seem to be blocked, nowhere to go. Fantastic. So I decided to do what I should always do before playing, consult the manual. And there it tells me the spin attack can destroy some doors, which is good news. The spin attack plays a big part in this game, but early on, in fact most of the way through this game, I did neglect it since it has that age-old bullshittery of sapping your health away as you use it. I'm not a fan of that. Plus it takes ages to charge up, and the enemies, they do not play around. You'll get punked before you can even use it. Sadly, it can't break this ice block thing. What it can do is slot into these holes in the ground which tend to unlock doors or move platforms. I end up finding an access chip, which is an upgrade to let me use computers, but only to level 1 so far. The lift at the entrance and the one right next to the place I found it, they are a no-go so far. What an absolute tease. And by the way, some advice. Remember these locations, remember these places you couldn't access before, because you will be expected to come back here later without any hint whatsoever. You just gotta remember. So there's one door I can go in, and it leads me to the first boss of the game. I don't know why, but all the bosses in this game are in 3D environments as opposed to 2D. It's interesting, but I don't know if I actually like it. The first boss is a centipede which splits up into different parts. The only important part is the head, and I think the arse. I'm not entirely sure. I'm never sure about the arse. Because another issue with this game is the feedback on hitting something. You're not always convinced you're doing the right thing. I thought I was doing pretty well first try, but eventually my health just didn't last. The second time, I decided to go in a different direction before going back into the boss room, and I picked up a health pack, essentially doubling my health. And despite the absolute chaos of the fight, I overcame it to pick up another health upgrade. I was feeling like the Terminator already. I'd tripled my health in 3 minutes. After each boss fight, or most of them, you also pick up some magic, and our first magic is fire. You can see how this would be super useful against the ice block, so I went through there and got absolutely mullered, like in a painfully unfair way. Some of these robots, they do not let up. Calm down, man. The extra health did nothing to protect me here. So, even though I was convinced that's the way I should probably go, I decided to see anything else would open up. Maybe I could find another upgrade somewhere. I get back to town and oh no, the scientist lady's been kidnapped by pirates. I think they got the wrong definition of booty. The kid tells you they are up north, so maybe that's where I'm supposed to go. Before that though, I explore the town a bit more. If you see these male toilet signs on the floor, it means you can get out and have a piss. I mean, no, it means you can get out and go into houses. In one of them, there's this long-winded man who has a memory game. He'll tell you a weird story and then he'll quiz you at the end. I did this twice, and it was painful, and I basically got a pittance for it each time. What an absolute waste. He goes on forever, like minutes, and I have a terrible short-term memory, so thanks for nothing. With your new firepower, you can burn these and almost incinerate the person trapped inside them at the same time. This opens the pathway to the tower. They are so grateful for their now lack of eyebrows, they wanted to grant you the wire arm, which is essentially the hookshot. Yes, 1 hour into this game, you've already got the Hookshot. Who said this was an RPG? It's a Zelda game. Apparently the tower is in the northwest, but there's a bit of a hitch since I can't get there. I can't get past this water pool. I left my rubber dinghy attachment at home. I knew there was something. There's always something you forget. Actually, there is no rubber dinghy attachment, but yeah, at this point, I'm not sure what to do. Do I go past this ice block even though I'll get mullered? I've been told to go north to get the girl, but I can't get past this water. So this is the segment of the game that pops up like 3 or 4 times. It's not the action part, it's not the puzzle part, it's the where the hell do I go part. Wandering around like a dude who just got dropped in the middle of nowhere by aliens after a less than comfortable probing. You're not sure where you're supposed to go from here. Thankfully, this segment of that was short enough because I stumbled across a back entrance of sorts to Fogna, which is different from Fog Tower and Fog Edge. Don't be an idiot and get these confused. I would never do that. Why I'm going back into this dungeon to rescue the girl who's in a different place, I don't know. But this should be the right place because we get a cutscene which gives us a flashback of our Leon, who is seemingly called Beta. Cat Dog is much better. And there's also someone called Omega. This is quite mysterious and vague, something about experiments and samples, but yeah. This hookshot's coming in handy across gaps, hitting switches from afar. It's all going good until I realize, hang on a minute, this is just the same room I came in through the ice, and I'm getting mullered again. So then maybe not. I wander around for a bit and find a third entrance to this dungeon, now underwater. After punching some octopus and fish, as you do, I get to a dead end of sorts, so I am all out of ideas. But it turns out, it's just my own stupidity because I forgot about my spinny thing. It allowed me to get past this falling tile thing, god damn it. Doing this froze some parts of the dungeon, allowing me to walk over what was once water. This led me to my second power-up, ice. Ice, ice, baby. Yeah, you can guess what this is for. But one neat thing this can do, and is necessary for getting out of this place, you can freeze enemies and then use them as weights for switches. That's pretty cool. Don't forget, never forget what each ability can do because you will get so lost and so stuck in this game if you do. Combining my 2 new abilities, I found a skill ROM which now allows me to pick up small stones, which is important for puzzle solving. So now it's time to go to Fog Tower, get the girl. But the problem number something, is running out of magic at the wrong time. Oh look, now I can't freeze this water because I ran out of magic. It's a pain in the arse. Refilling is just luck. You know, fighting monsters until they drop the specific ice magic. Yeah, there's no all-encompassing magic power. Each element has its own magic and it's a pain in the arse. You can go to town to refill it by paying money, but again, that's just a pain. Backtracking, man. So this is Fog Tower, supposedly where the pirates live. And it's essentially 12 floors of pure puzzleage. I love it. Block pushing all night long, baby. Mazes, logic, order, being a bit clever with abilities. It's fantastic, and this is by far and away the game's biggest strength. These individual puzzle rooms are almost always excellent. Some easy, some normal, some absolute brain busters. I love this part of the game. When it's like dungeon spanning puzzles, like doing one thing here affects something somewhere else, that's less fun because of the terrible signposting this game has, but individual puzzles, it's a chef kiss worthy of goodness. By the way, be sure to pick up all of these defense and attack modules on the way. You need them, trust me. You'll also notice these little terminals on the higher floors. You can't access them yet, but remember them for later. We get to the top and meet Juji, the leader of the pirates. He congratulates you for getting up here, but you need one last show of strength. You need to fight one of his champions. And this guy is speeding around all over the place. He seems unmanageable, but the fact that I had low health didn't help, and even when failing, you're not granted much health back, so you either need to grind for more health by defeating monsters, or just go again and hope for the best. Guess what I did? Looking back and knowing what I know now, I feel and look like an idiot because it's not that tough really. You can use the block to really help out. And I know when I talk about how awful the combat is in this game, I know plenty of people will say, oh, why didn't you use the block? Well, it's still rubbish, but it's pretty good for this boss fight. Just block and chase him down. Maybe even fire magic at him. And because he lost, he gets murdered. Nice. We are granted access to a town called Metal Heaven, which is nothing of the sort, but it's about being strong because even there you are harassed by these pricks. This town is miserable. The power-ups overpriced, the residents stuck in their houses because they were lied to about what was up here, but we do get a flashback again with you and Omega standing over an even bigger mech that you brought with you just in case. We get to a small dungeon called the Factory. This does something interesting with conveyor belts. We get a second access chip, meaning more doors can be unlocked. I also get a flame spinner, which I did not use a single time. Apparently the first goal was to turn on the power to the factory so you can use the elevator to go up to the second floor, which is where you will see Senen, the scientist girl, who says Juji is waiting for you. He tells you that it was his men, the pirates, who turned Fogna on and caused all the chaos. He wants you to join him so you can harness the power together, and when you refuse his help, he wants to kick your ass. This guy is the easiest boss in the game, since you can just freeze him in place and stunlock him pretty much. I wish they were all this easy. Juji is tied up to the post and we are gifted a wetsuit, meaning we can travel in water way more easy, and our hint now is that we can access more of the Fogna dungeon. Remember, that's different from the Fog Tower, ladies and gentlemen. Oh man, going down the elevator that I couldn't go down before, I had so much trouble in this room. It's so simple. There are 3 enemies in it, there are 2 pressure pads, you need to freeze them on, but goddamn, these robots are just brutal, almost indefensible. I died so many times in this room just getting this done. You do get an upgrade to catch rocks, the one purpose of which is to hit switches from far away. And now we have the worst boss in this game. Seriously, this boss is horrible because player feedback is just non-existent. This took me almost 1 hour, mainly because I didn't know whether what I was doing was correct or not. It starts off as this haunter looking robot that anytime you close in on it, it backs off, meaning you need to attack from distance. You have magic, which is not infinite, and you have your wimpy hookshot. It's miserable. Am I doing anything? I don't know. After a while, another prick shows up, but this one is fake. I think it's fake, maybe. I don't know. But they're just as impossible. I mean, not impossible, just utterly long-winded because I don't know what I'm doing. Is it correct or not? Am I hurting them? Just give me a health bar so I can see. No idea. 1 hour. 1 hour doing this, and for half of that time, I was running around the battlefield aimlessly and fruitlessly trying to catch them off guard. After 0 success, I started using the higher field, which is super awkward due to your less than stellar movement. Sometimes I seem to damage them, other times I don't. And of course, the camera doesn't include both of them in one shot, at times meaning you get blindsided, making punch of faiths. That fight was just miserable. Yes, I'm saying miserable. Now you've seen it, it might not be so difficult for you, now that you know the technique, but being dropped in unawares is so frustrating and so boring. But winning grants you the Geost Stone, which can destroy cracked floors. This took me a while to figure out. I was looking for floors like this, but actually the important bit is floors like this, which immediately grants us a new power-up, Plasma, which again, I didn't really have much to go on. It says damages surrounding enemies and provides plasma energy. That's the key here. Nowhere in the manual does it say to look out for this symbol, but you need to look out for this symbol. If you read the instruction, it kind of does say that just about. Would it be nice to have been slightly more obvious? So, now we can go even deeper into this dungeon. There is a bewildering puzzle here. I don't know what the rules were, but I'm pretty sure you could only step on one color once and in a certain order. I don't know, I just guessed. Trial and error, baby. And now, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the second most infuriating and most harsh puzzle in the game. You have to open the gates and then spin the hell out. Simple concept. Been done to death in video games before, but what's not been done to death is the focus on absolute perfection. You have like a milliseconds worth of time to balls up. Any more than that, and you'll be smacking your head against the wall in both video game and in real life. 15 minutes doesn't sound like much time spent on a puzzle, but goddamn, it felt like forever. It's hard to explain how weird the controls are when spinning. It's like you're always fighting against it from spinning off in a weird direction. It's like a magnet for walls. And then when your ball's up, you have to do the walk of shame all the way back. And not just that, but the weird jumping down from the ledge mechanic that decides if it's gonna do it or not on a whim. Am I gonna jump off? No. Alright then. 15 minutes. We come out onto West Fog Edge, which is different from Fog Tower and Fogna, don't forget that. And we have another flashback. It's a brief one, as we see CatDog get trapped in the place that they found him 5,000 years later. I don't know the purpose of this part as to why we're in this area, like what's the motivation for stepping out of the dungeon that you want to be in, but we end up in a deep sea facility, which is kind of cool. Not sure what these spear-wielding robots are doing at the bottom of the ocean. Are they expecting some tuna to swim by or something? I don't know. It seems the biggest thing to come here for is the new attachment that allows you to pull. Wonderful, now I can start chatting up the robo ladies at the dance club. I'm skipping like loads of puzzles, by the way, in order to keep this brief. I say that as my script is currently 4,000 words long. I do like this puzzle because you now have to pull the corpse of a monster onto the switch. You can't push it here because if you push it, you'll block yourself out of the exit. And the game, it does a really good job of making you think about whether you want to push something to the place or pull something to the place. I've never seen such a huge distinction in a game before. It's absolutely vital, even in wide open environments. You really need to consider pull or push. It seems the unintentional purpose of this dungeon was to meet up with this dude, Omega, the one from your flashback. In the words of Paul McCartney, he's not half the man he used to be. Apparently he woke you up from your slumber with transmissions, hopefully manual, not that pansy automatic, and he says, "We're from the moon." Ah, not the moon, goddammit. If I had a penny for every time a video game character said, "We're from the moon," I'd still be in the queue for the soup kitchen, but I might be able to buy a cigarette or two. 5,000 years ago, there was a world war that destituted the planet. Humans became half mechanoid, goddamn Elon, and they came back from the moon to purify the planet once more, terraform it as such. That is what Fogna was for. But when it switched on, the purifier went crazy and started doing the opposite of what was intended. Never buy Xiaomi, alright? From experience, yeah, they look good, they look slick, the price is pretty good, but actually in 3 months they'll be falling apart. Apparently, the mother computer is now called Psycho Mother, which for me was just growing up in Sheffield. Like, everybody had a psycho mother, that was the thing. If you had a normal mother, you were the odd one out. Omega tells us to find the big mech to pilot and destroy Psycho Mother. We actually know where it is because we passed it on the way here, I just didn't show you. Here it is. This is a really tough boss fight because he's just super aggressive. It took a good 15 minutes trying before I eventually got him. It's all about avoiding his attacks, which is super obvious thing to say, but really just avoid him and then take your pot shots. And of course, use the big hitting magic, which I think works, but then again, I'm not really sure. There's very little feedback. So, without this robot, now we have to go in alone, but we need the Nova Stone instead, which is on the moon colony, which is on the moon. How do we get to the moon? Well, remember Fog Tower? Not to be confused with Fogna or Fog Edge. Apparently, it's also a rocket, of course. We've now got level 3 access, and at this point I decided to hoover up some power-ups before going to space. Omega is killed by Mother, who tries to catch you before flying off, and we're on the moon colony, which is perhaps the biggest dungeon in the game. It's pretty chill in terms of puzzles, but right off the bat you get the worst one in the entire game. Remember that spinny test like a couple of minutes ago? Here's another one. Oh, and it's way more difficult. Again, it didn't really take that long. In fact, it took 7 minutes, which is less than the first one. But it felt like 7 days. And in those 7 minutes, like in the middle of that, I took a 3-day break just because it seemed impossible. I can't believe they just didn't extend the time needed by just 1 second. That would have made it like fairer. Like, still challenging, but you know, fair. But no, you need almost perfection doing this. After going over a pretty harsh bridge with turrets that make it impossible to progress because you just don't have the time to get your hookshot out or even your magic, they don't play around. Eventually, you get to Grandmother, the computer on the moon. She tells you where the Nova Stone is, and apparently you are the designer of Psycho Mother. It's all your fault everyone died, but you can command her to stop it if you reach the basement. You're going into Mother's basement. But first, the Nova Stone, you have this brain-busting puzzle that mixes puzzle solving and actual skill to pull it off. You have to connect the power lines to cross the bridge. It only lasts a few seconds, and again, this is where the push versus pull conundrum comes in to make it work. Great, that's not too bad, but then you realize, oh wait, it wants me to cross the bridge, pick up a giant stone, and then walk all the way back in pretty much 0 time before the bridge retracts. Obviously, I'm skipping the 15 minutes that it took me to work it all out and then pull it off, so probably you think, it's super easy. It's not, alright? At least I don't think it was. So, we've got the Nova Stone, which is a super magic attack pretty much. It also has super mild puzzle solving to grab power-ups, but we're at the end game right now, so there's not much to be going on with. Just as you're about to exit though, there's one last carpet pull from under your feet. A rogue robot has entered one of the big mechs in the hangar, and there's one left for you to take it out. This is the most unique boss battle in the game. You have 2 attacks, a machine gun, as well as a lock-on charge attack. It's pretty chaotic as you're both like trying to out-circle each other. There doesn't seem to be much skill or strategy involved, and that's why I came out on top first time of trying. Oh yeah. It's time to go to the basement of Fogna. This is the final dungeon, and it's really not that bad all things considered. The puzzles aren't frustrating, there's some classic pulling and pushing boxes, which I'm a master at for some reason, and there's the slightly confusing sliding platforms that move in the direction you walk on them. You have to line them up properly to use the other platform to block the one you're on. You've seen this before. It's basic stuff, we've seen them in games before, but it's made more difficult by the scope. Like, you can't really get a feel for the whole room, like to know or remember what position things are in, but eventually you do it. We also get our final spinny challenge, which is nowhere near as bad as the previous 2, although it's devious in the fact that the floor just disappears without warning. You have to get across it before it all fades away. I did it pretty easy, no complaints here. But here is Psycho Mother. She's exposition dumping, saying that she's purifying the earth, just in a better way by destroying humanity. Another one of those excuses. These video game bad guys might have a point. She says she will give birth to no man. No man. Not even the least bit of subtlety, lady. Like Norman, okay, if you said Norman, you could vaguely hide the pun, but no, she's too arrogant for subtlety. No man. Anyways, you switch her off, but it doesn't work. She reboots and is even more angry. No man is born and we've got to face it, but not before we somehow see Juji here. Remember him, the pirate leader? Well, he actually has a subplot which, if you follow, will let him turn up here. Basically saying he was a good guy at first, but came to hate the local town after they didn't help his son, who was trapped in a landslide and died. Like, he wanted to become powerful enough for revenge. But then after you capture him and ignore his bribe, and he sees the generosity of those people around him, even as a prisoner, he realizes the error of his ways, and so he came here to do bugger all but die. Cheers for the power-up, fella. It's the final boss. No man is absorbed by a monster, and this thing is seemingly a beast. He is so aggressive. You get near him, he spins around with this huge reach. He has a laser that follows you faster than you can walk. He brings out the Tommy guns for the real pain. And the trouble with this is, when you die, you start outside the room and you only have 30% of health, which isn't really ideal when going up against the final boss of the game, so you have to either try your luck or grind for health against the monsters in this room. Thankfully, your magic reverts to the level it was before you fought him, and the best tactic seemed to be the Nova Stone, not surprising considering you went to get it especially for this boss. The issue is the Nova Stone drains each magic type, like every single one, by 8. And so it's limited to the lowest one that you have. You can see my yellow element is only 25, so it limits me to 3 uses in the battle. I try a few times, I fail a few times. I can barely get close to him to punch him in the nuts. After I run out of the Nova Stone, I try what magic is left, like the plasma, the fire, the ice, but I'm not actually sure it's doing anything, so I have to do something I really wanted to avoid doing: grind. I told you you can recover health and magic by defeating enemies, but the more types of magic you have, the worse the odds are of getting the one you need. I literally only needed to improve the yellow one, but it was either useless money or health I didn't really need, or an element that was already full. God damn, why couldn't there have been like a universal magic restorer? It just wouldn't give me what I needed. Everything was full except that damn yellow one. It was mind-numbing. It took me about 30 minutes in total to get full magic, and so I decided to go for it. I was already getting decent at this fight because between grinding, I did occasionally try and learn his patterns, learn his 3 different forms he has, so yeah, I finally went in with everything full, and I only used the magic one time. Every time he brought out the Tommy guns, I just got so close to him he couldn't even hit me, at least not enough. It's the go hard or go home tactic that the devs may not have anticipated, but it worked. I'm not saying it was easy because he did get some big hits and pot shots here and there, but I had a full heal in the tank as he starts to explode and lets off one final attack before he is destroyed. Game complete. He calls for mummy as he blows up, as do the tentacles. Much to many an otaku's disappointment. There's just one last thing to do, and that's to put a seal on the matter. Cat's dog needs to go back to the moon colony to switch it off properly now that Psycho Mother is finished. This means he needs to say goodbye to his new friends who he's barely talked to the whole game. Fogna vanishes and the earth becomes green and lush again. Overall, what do I think of Elemental Gimmick Gear? Well, the fact I was considering doing a full retrospective on it probably tells you it's an interesting enough game. And there's no way I would let a video in this series get over like 40 minutes or whatever if it didn't deserve it. And it's certainly one of the most fascinating releases on the Dreamcast because there's nothing quite like it. It's a game that has all the hallmarks of being a classic, but it falters where it counts. Don't get me wrong, I like the puzzle designs, there's nice variety, I love the visual style and the music, oh sublime. Even the story is mildly interesting. It's a decent length, but it's let down by poor hit detection, impossibly rubbish attacks on the player's part, overly fast enemies, and some sadistic puzzles that have no right to be as harsh as they are. The mechanics feel very unpolished or ill thought out. It's also a game you'll end up wandering around, wondering where to go next, which I usually don't mind, but it's especially egregious here as there's only one major dungeon that you have to keep going back to in different sections of it, which you might not remember which place you can go. Oh god. If this ever got a remaster with tweaks to the mechanics, I'd love to give this like a 9 out of 10, but in actuality, in terms of fun, it's like a 7. In terms of presentation, super impressed, the 2D art style sublime, the music is excellent, the 3D sections offer a bit of whiplash that stands out like a sore thumb. I'd give it an 8 out of 10. In terms of difficulty, well, this is tough because the game is generous when you die. You're not punished for your endless deaths, it's easy enough with persistence. And the puzzles are mostly solid and logical, but then you have this shit biscuit of a task. And then there is the difficulty of wandering around like a vagrant, not knowing where to go next. I'd give it a 6 out of 10 for that, maybe. Maybe a 6.5, alright? Completion time, 12 hours. If you watched all the way through, please leave me an egg emoji in the comments. I want to know who the legends are amongst you. Special thanks to my Patreon supporters, I greatly appreciate you. They get lots of great perks. The main one, for the fans of this series, you get to watch these videos 1 week early. And of course, ad-free. You can watch the next one right now with the links below. It's a bit of a classic. House of the Dead 2, baby. Special thanks to my super producers, Alexander Cato, Brent McLean, FF14 Best RPG, Vey, Sven Nowlertz, Wixit, Josh Foot, Punky Dudester, and Germonic.